So Vinyl Nation, I was born in the 80s and I still grew up with vinyl. My parents moved
What? No,
me,
just
and this documentary really got to me. That final question, like, what do you want to do when with vinyl after you die? It was a very powerful question, I think, even for me. What was it like for you, you guys getting into this process and finding out all these different stories of how passionate people are for vinyl?
this is Kevin. We kind of figured that would be the case going in. We didn't have a movie if it wasn't the case. Like if people were lukewarm about vinyl, or if we couldn't find the people that were really into it, then we weren't the people to make this movie. Um, I think the fact, and Chris will probably be more eloquent about this than I will, but I think the fact that we found so many people with so many stories that were particular and subjective to them, and yet also overlapped with each other. Like that's the making of a great movie, or else what you have is a series of monologues. You just have filmed clips of people talking and telling their own stories. But if you have stories that resonate with one another, you're able to make cinema out of it. You're able to cross cut between them. You're able to group things in terms of themes and subject matter. And we didn't know that we were going to be that lucky when we started talking to the people that ended up being in this movie. But we were enormously fortunate that the percentage of people we talked to, about 90% of them had great stories, and we were able to fit pretty much all of them in the movie in one little way or another. So that was a really special thing for us too.
Chris, would you like to add anything?
Now, I agree with Kevin. I think one of the things that was really fascinating was when we would meet with people that came from totally different worlds, different lives, different backgrounds, look totally different from one another. And then they were telling us like their exact same story in relationship to their records in their lives. And like Kevin said, being able to cross cut between those stories just to show the similarities that are common amongst people who are into records was really great. And our editors were kind of quick to point that out right when they saw the raw footage. It said, you guys think you've made a documentary about the resurgence of vinyl records, and we think what you actually have on your hands here is a documentary about human connection.
Definitely true. I connected with the film. How do you guys connect with the vinyl lovers out there? Where do you guys stand when it comes to vinyl?
Oh shoot. That's a really good question. I mean, I guess I should put it in a little bit of a frame. Like, uh, neither Chris and I are older than you, but we're not old enough to have been people who were around when vinyl was the only way people listened to music. We're of the early MTV cassette and CD generation. Um, so we both got into vinyl as grown ass adults, and so that meant our what people typically consider the formative musical years of one's lives. The teens and the early 20s, we were way older than that by the time we got into records. So I think I can speak for both of us when I say that many of our early vinyl purchases were rebuying albums that were special to us when we were teenagers. But since then, and I hope I can speak for both of us here, it's largely been a process of exploration and discovery. We have really I had a little bit of a head start with Chris when it came to records, and I got into it at a time just before the comeback when used records were still pretty cheap. So I just saw it as a way to be in, like, record community college forever. Like, it's a cheap musical education, and this is before Spotify and streaming and all that kind of thing. And so I just kind of organized my record collecting and crate digging that way. I'd be like, what's the theme this month? The theme this month is 60s soul music. Cool. That's what we're going to do. And then what's the theme next month? It's Latin jazz. Okay, we're doing Latin jazz. And I just sort of colored in the undiscovered countries on the great globe of music. I think I still kind of approach it that way. I have more records now, and I'm also more interested in making sure I have complete collection of the artists that are most important to me. but it is still very much, even though we made this movie and I've been at records for going on 14 years now, I still feel that I'm at the very beginning of my journey with records. And I just, it's a wonderful place to be. You're never jaded and cynical when you're at the beginning. So Chris, how about you?
Yeah, I don't have nearly as many records as Kevin has. And he's right. Like, I think those first records, as I got back into vinyl records around 2014, were definitely the ones that meant something to me when I was younger. And, some of those are favorite albums. But like Kevin said, I too have found myself more on a journey of exploration when it comes to vinyl. And I don't, like I said, I don't have a large collection, but once it's been a while since I haven't brought a record that's at least new to me and my collection into the fold, I find myself having this hankering to get a few more albums in. And it's been fun to actually sometimes just hear something, not hear the music, but just hear something about an album and just hear people rave about it. And then just, on blind faith, based on what I'm hearing, just go grab it. And just be pleasantly surprised by whatever it is. And a number of times, that hasn't led me astray, and it's usually broadened my horizons when it comes to different styles of music. So similar to what Kevin was saying, but again, on a smaller scale.
Awesome. It seems like both of you guys have incredible stories when it comes to vinyl as well. So what made you guys want to make a documentary about all these people who have their own personal connection with vinyl?
I wanted to make a documentary because I've loved documentaries since I was in high school. I don't know how to make movies. Chris knows how to make movies. And Chris and I had worked together on a different project. Chris and I went to university together, but I'm a few years older than him, and our time there didn't overlap very much. We had worked on a different project. I had written a book about 80s teen movies, and Chris had brought me to Albuquerque to screen The Breakfast Club and Pretty in Pink and Heathers and stuff like that. We chit-chatted some, we sold a bunch of books, and we decided it was clear that we worked really well together. And he had shown me some of his shorts and his feature film Sense. And I just really dug his work as a filmmaker, and it was clear we worked really well together, and he had skills that I didn't. And so I asked him if he'd ever thought about making a documentary, and he hadn't. And I said, well, that's cool. I have exactly one idea. And it's, how do we explain the comeback of records, which at that point was 10 years old. When we started talking about it in 2018, the comeback of records was not a new story anymore. So we were not in a position to make Vinyl Nation, hey, did you hear records were coming back movie? Because that was old news when we started making this movie. So it had to be about something else. It had to be about what does the comeback of records mean? What does it say about our relationship to music and our relationship to each other?
Awesome.
And like I said, Kevin, when he brought the idea to me, I was looking for another project to get started on. I hadn't made documentaries before, but since I had been getting back into records, like a lot of people, it definitely spoke to me. But I think the thing that really got me interested in it was my teenage daughter was also getting into records. She had her own turntable. And I was curious about this new group of fans, especially young fans and a lot of young female fans that were getting into records who had never owned music in a physical format before. So I wanted to dig a little bit deeper into that. And I saw, okay, if there's that one facet to this, there's probably a lot more for us to explore. So yeah, we don't live in the same city. That's another one of the things that presented a challenge, but we get on the phone once a week and start hashing things out. And quickly after we started brainstorming, we found ourselves reaching out to people both within our networks and then a little bit separated from our networks to do a little bit more primary research. And after about 6 months of that, we realized that I think we have enough content here to put something together, but we better get going because, otherwise it's just all going to kind of fall apart on us. So we quickly pulled things together and shot everything in 2019 and finished in February 2020, which is a great time to finish a movie.
I'm in LA, so I grew up going to Amoebas.
Sure.
And yeah, I felt really sad when I heard that it was closing down. Luckily, it was saved and it reopened. It's a fantastic new area.
I got to jump in here. because this is Amoeba's in our movie and is very special to us because I live in San Francisco where Amoeba was born. Amoeba was never closing down. Amoeba was moving across the street, and they had to close. And they had to close the Sunset Boulevard location sooner than they thought because of the pandemic. But Amoeba was never in danger of going out of business.
Oh, that's
yeah, and that is not your mistaken thinking. That is, for some reason, that rumor got out there, and we've heard 24 versions of that story. And we have to, and for Amoeba's sake and for everybody's, we have to keep, for everybody who loves that place, we have to keep saying that was never going to happen. Amoeba was never in trouble.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, for me, like I said, I really enjoy going to record stores. I really enjoy getting new music, especially physical. Like, it's very rare for me to get enjoy a band unless I see the physical copy in my hand at some point.
Sure.
For you guys, what is it like when you walk into a record store, and what do you hope that this film, does for record stores?
So I'll take this one first. This is Chris. I realize, like, if you walk into a record store, you can't walk in and only have like 5 minutes to spare. Like that's just a really bad idea. You can't even just have 15 minutes. You kind of need to know, like, I'm going to be here for probably, at least for me, like I need to be able to spend at least about an hour or so, just knowing that I have time to just take my time, look through all the racks, because I don't even know what I'm looking for, basically, whenever I walk into a record store, because I don't know what's going to be there. And that's part of the fun and part of the joy, is like flipping through the racks and you don't know what you're going to discover. And I think a lot of us probably have a list that's sitting on the back of our minds, or it's on our iPhones and our notes app, of like records that we do want to get if we come across them. But I never really look at that. And I'm just flipping through, and all of a sudden, an album that meant something to me when I was younger, or that I've heard a lot about, or just like, there's just something that strikes me. It could even be the album cover, and you want to take it out and take a look at it. And it's always fun to bump into other people who are there. And if they have a recommendation for you, when they see you pull that album out of the racks, they're typically not going to steer you wrong. So I just need time, I think, to spend in a record store. And if I don't have that time, I really don't want to go because it's just no fun to have to like rush through a record store. And I've never gone to a record store during this resurgence and be like, oh, I'm only going to this record store to get this one album, and then I'm out of there. Like, that's it. Like, that's just not the experience that I want to have with record stores. So I hope, and I'll have Kevin chime in and talk about his experiences, but as far as our movie's concerned, I hope that it actually introduces more people to the joy that is shopping for records in record stores. And you don't have to be into records to actually enjoy our movie, because I think you'll connect with a lot of the people in our film. And we've heard from a lot of people who've seen our film that have said, like, I didn't even realize that record stores were growing, and also were really, really welcoming. Like, a lot of people still have in their minds that image of a record store, say in High Fidelity, or record collectors like the Steve Buscemi character in Ghost World. And those are now anachronisms. And virtually all record stores that are thriving these days are really open, encouraging, inviting environments where the owners and the people that work there want to talk to you about music, want to share with you their ideas about records and music. And they're not going to scoff at you if you're asking for the latest Taylor Swift, because they're going to have it, and it's going to be there on vinyl.
I'd say in a big way that, like, if Chris and I did not have such a special relationship with record stores for most of our lives, it's unlikely this movie would have been made. If we did not grow up with physical places that are living, breathing manifestations of one's love of music, this Vinyl Nation would have never happened. I mean, I guess those exist in some other form. Maybe concert venues are that too. But like, typically when you go to a concert venue, you're only there to see one act. So it's not like you look at a crowd at a concert venue and you could say, well, these are the fans of one act, but these aren't people who wake up every day, thanking the universe that music exists. Those are the kind of people that spend a bunch of time in record stores. Some of them are unpleasant, some of them are weirdos, but that's increasingly not the case anymore. In fact, I'm actually surprised when we went to several record stores for this movie. We continue to go to a lot of record stores now. We're actually surprised when we go to a record store and it's staffed by like grumpy antisocial people. Like that just doesn't happen much anymore. The other thing that's really cool about the resurgence of vinyl and how good it's been to the resurgence of record stores is that there are very, very few places in the United States, and I think this is probably true for most other countries. There are very few places in the United States that are like bad record towns anymore. 10 years ago, when I should say, like 12 years ago, when my now brother-in-law and I met, he lived in Sacramento, and everybody would tell me, there's no place to buy records in Sacramento. Like, don't bother taking your brother-in-law shopping in Sacramento. There's nothing there. Absolutely not true anymore. There's a half a dozen great record stores in Sacramento. You growing up in Los Angeles, I'm sure there was a point in time where someone would say to you, oh, well, there's great record stores on the west side, but not on the east side. There's great record stores in this neighborhood, but not in that neighborhood. Great record stores in Hollywood, but not in Boyle Heights. Not true anymore. A neighborhood is essentially incomplete now if it doesn't have a good record store. So I really think that that is a very special thing, and one of the results of the comeback of records that we hope we document in Vinyl Nation that is really most special to us, just as people, and not as the filmmakers.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys very much for your time. Once again, Vinyl Nation is a fantastic documentary that I connected with a lot, and I hope other people do as well. And thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, you mind if I give out the socials before we quit here?
Go for it.
Cool. You want to find out more about Vinyl Nation, vinylnationfilm.com, and on the socials on Facebook and Instagram, Vinyl Nation Doc, D-O-C.
Awesome. Well, have a great rest of your day to both of you, and I hope you guys find more music up ahead.
You too, man. Thanks
so much.